My wife and I love going for walks at this time of the year. It's inescapable that it's autumn, or as the Americans call it poetically, fall. The leaves are falling from the trees in brown cascades, creating a beautiful pattern upon the forest floor. It got me thinking about the seasons, how it is that the weather changes from kind of the spring to the summer to the autumn, the winter, and then back again. It got me thinking as well, Paul, particularly how it is that God's dealing with the earth and mankind, with men and women, has changed over time. I want to think about that briefly. In Hebrews 1, verse 1, we read this: God, who at various times and in various ways spoke in times past to the fathers by the prophets. This is referring to a season, a time that has passed. God used to speak to the people of Israel by the prophets, by Moses, for example, and he gave them the law. He gave them the 10 Commandments. These were rules that they should follow. And what happened is that they failed to do so. They broke God's laws. Each and every one of them did so. And when they did so, they had to come to the temple or the tabernacle, come to the priest and offer a sacrifice and ask the forgiveness of God. And what that day really demonstrated is that men and women were unable to keep the law of God. They were guilty, each and every one of them. Now, while that day has passed, the same is still true. None of us are able to keep the law of God. Each and every one of us is what the Bible calls a sinner and is guilty in the sight of God. The Bible refers to another season, another day. In 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 10, we read this: But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. This is not a very pleasant sounding day, the day of the Lord. Elements are going to melt with a fervent heat. It's referring to a day coming when the Lord will come and will judge this earth. We talked about the fact that no one has followed God's laws and they're all guilty. God's going to come and deal with this earth and deal with mankind and judge it. But two things I read here: it will come. That means that day has not yet come, and that's going to be really important, as we're going to see in a second. But also, it's going to come as a thief in the night. That means it's going to come when we don't expect it. God knows when that day is going to come, but we don't know. So then, what day is it today? What season is it today? Well, for me, today is Sunday. And the season, as I said at the start, is autumn. But what day is it in terms of how God is dealing with men and women? And how is God dealing with this world? The answer can be found in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. We read this: We then, as workers together with him, also plead with you not to receive the grace of God in vain. For he says, In an acceptable time I have heard you, and in the day of salvation I have helped you. Behold, now is the acceptable time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. So it is the day of salvation. The Lord Jesus Christ came to this earth 2,000 years ago and went to the cross of Calvary and died to pay the price, the penalty for that sin, for that disobedience, for men and women breaking the law of God. And so it is that God freely offers by his grace that any who come to him and confess their sin and admit their guilt and ask him for forgiveness, God will freely take away their sin and forgive them. He will save them. Hence it is the day of salvation. And so Paul is pleading with the people there to receive the grace of God. Don't reject it. And I would ask the same, that you don't receive the grace of God in vain. You don't reject the grace of God given to you in this wonderful day, the day of salvation. There's a day coming, the day of the Lord, and God will judge this world, and he will punish those who remain with their guilt and remain with their sins. But that day is not yet come. For today, it is still the day of salvation.